I was worried when my son Connor's third-grade teacher, Mrs. Watson, called me to school in Chicago. She said Connor was constantly failing in math classes. But this was impossible. As 35-year-old repairman Adrian Wells, I taught Connor math at home. He was a very smart child. Mrs. Watson's test papers showed Connor as failing. But Connor told me he gave correct answers on tests. Could Mrs. Watson be changing Connor's answers? My name is Adrian Wells. I live in a small house in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood and work as an HVAC technician. I have a one-person business called Wells HVAC Services. I've been doing this job for 10 years and have customers in various parts of the city. I live with my 8-year-old son Connor. Connor's mother Linda unexpectedly left us 3 years ago. Since then, Connor and I have built a strong bond and started living a good life together. Connor is a naturally very smart child. He had learned numbers when he was only 4 years old. At 5, he could do simple addition and subtraction. I noticed early on that he was especially talented in mathematics. When we do homework together in the evenings, I'm always amazed. He can easily solve problems far above 3rd grade level. Sometimes he can even answer 4th and 5th grade level questions that challenge me. Connor's interest in mathematics isn't just natural talent. It's also the result of quality time we spend together. After Linda left us, I started spending more time with Connor. When I come home from work in the evenings, we first look at his homework, then prepare dinner together and watch television. On weekends, we usually go to the park or museum. From the first day he started at Stonehill Elementary School, Connor was very happy with school. He had friends and really enjoyed his classes. He also said positive things about his teacher, Mrs. Watson, initially. His classmates liked Connor and he got along well with them. Everything seemed normal and healthy. Every evening Connor would tell me about the good things that happened at school. At the end of last September, the situation slowly began to change. Connor started coming home from school upset. At first I thought this was normal school stress. New term adaptation could take time. But when Connor started saying he was struggling in math class, I was really surprised. This seemed very strange because math was his strongest and favorite subject. When I asked Connor, he said the math teacher was treating him differently. He told me that Mrs. Watson warned him more harshly compared to other children, and when announcing test results, she especially emphasized his grades. This seemed very odd because Mrs. Watson was an experienced teacher and such discrimination was unexpected behavior. In the first week of October, I received a call from the school office. Secretary Mrs. Peterson very politely said I urgently needed to meet with Connor's teacher, Mrs. Watson. The appointment was scheduled for 5 o'clock that evening, after class hours. Such sudden calls were usually made when there were serious problems. When I left work early and went to school, Mrs. Watson looked very serious and distant. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and quite a stern manner. She had been teaching at the school for 20 years and was known as a respected and experienced person among both students and parents. I had never heard any complaints from other parents. Mrs. Watson talked about Connor's recent math performance. She took Connor's test papers from the file on her desk and put them in front of me. Connor's grades were really very low. He had received grades like 3, 4, at most 5 out of 10. These results really shocked me because I saw Connor's math ability every day at home. Mrs. Watson spoke in a worried tone. Mr. Wells, Connor is struggling very seriously with mathematics. Such low grades are worrying. Are you helping him with math at home? Of course I am, Mrs. Watson. We do homework together every evening. Connor is really very talented in mathematics. We don't have any problems at home. Mrs. Watson looked with a skeptical expression. Unfortunately, test results paint a different picture. Maybe the problems he does at home are at an easier level than those at school. Or he might be getting help from you. No, Connor solves problems completely on his own. I only need to check. He's really very talented. Mrs. Watson showed other documents from the file. These were Connor's general behavior reports in class. There were notes about attention deficit, lack of motivation, and passive participation in math classes. When I returned home that evening, I had a long talk with Connor. I wanted to learn exactly what was happening in math classes at school. Connor looked very sad and shook his head. Dad, I always give correct answers on tests. I know addition and subtraction. But Mrs. Watson always gives me bad grades. This is very strange, Connor. Maybe your answers are wrong. You might be making mistakes because you get nervous during tests. No, Dad. I'm sure. I read the questions carefully and write the correct answers. But then when my test paper comes back, it has a bad grade on it. What else happens in class? Does Mrs. Watson treat you differently? Connor thought for a while, then answered, Yes, Dad. Mrs. Watson watches me differently from other children. Emma, who sits next to me, and I give the same answers, but Emma always gets good grades. These words from Connor really confused me. My child wasn't someone who would lie, and what he told me seemed very sincere. But it didn't make sense for Mrs. Watson to be prejudiced against Connor either. This situation was starting to worry me a lot. A week later, the situation got even worse. Mrs. Watson called me again and said Connor needed to be placed in a special support class for mathematics. This meant children would get a learning disability label and be separated from normal class activities. Mrs. Watson spoke very decisively on the phone. Mr. Wells, unfortunately, Connor's math situation isn't improving. We waited 3 more weeks, but there's no progress. Special education support has become necessary. Wait, Mrs. Watson. Connor has no problems with mathematics at home. This situation developed very suddenly. Everything was normal at the beginning of September. Sometimes children can behave differently at home and school. They feel more pressure at school. They can experience attention deficit. But Connor doesn't have attention problems. He can solve math problems for hours at home. Mr. Wells, I've been doing this job for 20 years. Connor's situation shows classic learning disability symptoms. This explanation didn't convince me at all. That evening I talked to Connor again and asked more detailed questions. Connor told me very interesting and worrying things. Dad, Mrs. Watson evaluates my test paper differently from others. I'm sure of my answers, but she always says they're wrong. I ask Emma, who sits next to me. She also says my answers are correct. So you and Emma give the same answers? Yes, Dad. Sometimes I look at Emma's paper. We write the same answers. But Emma gets good grades. I get bad grades. This isn't very fair. Does Mrs. Watson treat you differently in other ways too? Yes, Dad. She constantly watches me. When other children talk, she doesn't make a sound, but when I make a small movement, she immediately warns me. It's like she hates me. These statements really worried me. If Connor was telling the truth, Mrs. Watson was doing systematic discrimination against him. This would be a very serious situation. I decided to investigate more deeply. I knew the families of Connor's classmates. I talked to Emma's father, Pete Morrison. I told Pete about Connor's math situation and Mrs. Watson's behavior. Pete was very surprised. Adrian, this is very strange. Emma and Connor always work together. Both are very good at mathematics. Emma constantly says how smart Connor is. It's really impossible for Connor to fail. Did you ask Emma about Mrs. Watson's behavior? Yes, I did. Emma also said she found it very strange. She says Connor gives correct answers on tests, but Mrs. Watson gives him bad grades. What do you think I should do in this situation? Talk to the school administration. Mr. Franklin is a very fair principal. This is something that should be taken seriously. This conversation had strengthened my suspicions even more. Mrs. Watson really didn't seem to be treating Connor fairly. But I still couldn't understand the reason. That evening Connor and I studied math again. I gave him problems at the level Mrs. Watson gave. He solved them all perfectly correctly. He even easily handled some 4th grade level problems. Connor's math ability was definitely very high. Connor looked very sad while studying. Dad, I really know mathematics. Why doesn't Mrs. Watson believe me? Why does she want to send me to special class? I don't know, son, but I'll definitely solve this situation. Don't blame yourself. You're very smart and you know math very well. My friends also heard that I might go to special class. They were very surprised too. Everyone knows I'm good at mathematics. The next day, I made an appointment with Principal Mr. Franklin. Mr. Franklin was a 50-year-old, experienced and very fair administrator. I had talked with him several times before about school activities. I explained Connor's situation to him in detail. Mr. Franklin listened carefully and took notes. Mr. Wells, Mrs. Watson is really a very experienced and respected teacher. She's been working here for 20 years and we've never received complaints. But I definitely take your complaints seriously. Connor is really very successful with mathematics at home. This sudden drop seems very illogical. Especially the special education recommendation worries me a lot. I understand. Such decisions are very serious. They can affect children's lives. We definitely need to investigate this situation. Will you talk to Mrs. Watson? Of course. I'll both talk to Mrs. Watson and thoroughly review Connor's test papers and class performance. Mr. Franklin's investigation took exactly 1 week. During this time, Connor's situation didn't change. Mrs. Watson continued to treat him coldly, and math grades continued to stay low. Finally, Mr. Franklin called me again, saying he wanted to examine Connor's test papers together. When I went to school, I saw Connor's last 5 math tests in Mr. Franklin's office. The grades were indeed very low. But when I examined the test papers closely, I started noticing strange things. Connor's handwriting looked different in some places. It was as if some answers had been changed later. Mr. Franklin had noticed the same things. Mr. Wells, there appear to be traces of changes in these test papers. There are sections where eraser was used and written over again. What exactly does this mean? Connor's correct answers may have been erased and replaced with wrong answers later. But proving this definitively is very difficult. This situation was very serious. If Mrs. Watson was really changing Connor's test answers, this would be a very big ethical violation and maybe even a crime. Mr. Franklin thoughtfully suggested, "We need to investigate this matter more thoroughly. I have a very important suggestion for you, but I need your permission." "I'm listening, Mr. Franklin." "I want to specially observe Connor's next math test. We want to set up a small security camera in the classroom and record the entire process." "Is this legal? Will Mrs. Watson know about it?" "It's legal if we have parental consent. We won't tell Mrs. Watson for now because if there really is a problem, she might hide the situation." "I give permission too. I want to prove Connor's innocence and learn the truth." After making this decision, Mr. Franklin also involved Assistant Principal Mr. Johnson in the matter. Mr. Johnson was responsible for technical matters and knew security camera systems very well. A week later, the plan was ready. A small security camera was installed in the classroom in a way students wouldn't notice. The camera was positioned to focus especially on the desk where Connor sat and Mrs. Watson's teacher desk. Mrs. Watson definitely had no knowledge of this camera. When test day arrived, I was very excited and worried. The camera would record what Connor really did on the test and how Mrs. Watson behaved. Now we could learn the truth definitively. The test was conducted that afternoon. I was working, but my mind was constantly at school. At 3:30 the test ended, and at 4 o'clock Mr. Franklin called me. "Adrian, we recorded very interesting things. Come immediately. You need to see these recordings." I left work and rushed to school. Assistant Principal Mr. Johnson was also in Mr. Franklin's office. Mr. Johnson had examined the security camera recordings and looked very serious. Mr. Johnson opened his laptop computer and asked us to watch the recordings. "Adrian, you might be very shocked while watching these recordings. Are you ready?" "I'm ready. I want to learn the truth." The video started playing. We watched Connor's images during the test. Connor was answering all questions very carefully. His handwriting was neat and organized. The answers were definitely correct. Connor was really very successful and talented in mathematics. During the test, Mrs. Watson was behaving normally. She was walking around the classroom, helping when students asked questions. There was no abnormal behavior. The video continued. Students completed their tests and submitted them to Mrs. Watson. This part also looked normal. Connor looked confident and happy when submitting the test. Then the students went to recess. Mrs. Watson was left alone in the classroom. That's exactly when the shocking footage began. After Mrs. Watson collected all the test papers, she sat at the teacher's desk. She started examining the test papers one by one. She quickly checked other students' papers and put them aside. But when she took Connor's test paper in her hand, she behaved differently. Mrs. Watson looked at Connor's test paper for a long time. Then she took an eraser from her desk drawer. She started erasing Connor's correct answers one by one. This was an incredible sight. After Mrs. Watson erased Connor's answers, she started writing wrong answers. She was trying to imitate Connor's handwriting. She was very carefully writing wrong answers. I couldn't believe it. Mrs. Watson was really changing Connor's test answers. This was an incredible violation. It was unimaginable for a 20-year experienced teacher to do such a thing to a child. Mr. Franklin was very angry. This is completely unacceptable. How could Mrs. Watson do such a thing? This is both ethical violation and official document forgery. Mr. Johnson stopped the recordings and rewound them. Adrian, this isn't just today's test. We analyzed the recordings and Mrs. Watson has changed all of Connor's math tests like this for the last 2 months. How many tests is this? 7 tests total. She did the same thing in all of them. She erased Connor's correct answers and wrote wrong answers. Why? Why is she doing this to Connor? Mr. Franklin explained. We investigated the matter. Mrs. Watson's own daughter is the same age as Connor and attends another school. She struggles seriously with mathematics and receives special support. Apparently she's jealous of Connor's success and wants to make him look unsuccessful too. This was very sick behavior. It was completely unacceptable for a teacher to wrong an innocent child because of her own personal problems and jealousy. Mr. Johnson added while replaying the recordings. Also, we suspect that Mrs. Watson has done similar things not only to Connor but to other successful students in the class. She seems to especially target male students. This situation was a much bigger scandal. Mrs. Watson was systematically targeting certain children. She was playing with these children's futures and education. Mr. Franklin immediately announced his decision. I'm suspending Mrs. Watson from duty right now. This behavior is absolutely unacceptable. She won't come to school tomorrow morning. What will happen to Connor's grades? We'll evaluate all math tests from scratch. Grades will be given according to Connor's real performance. The special education recommendation is also immediately cancelled. Are there other affected children? We're investigating. There are 3 more children we suspect. We'll talk to their families too. When I returned home, I explained the situation to Connor. Connor's face lit up and he was very relieved. He wouldn't worry about math class anymore and could show his real abilities. Dad, so Mrs. Watson was really changing my answers. I always knew I was giving correct answers. Why did she do such a thing to me? Some people are sick, Connor. Mrs. Watson had her own problems and was uncomfortable with your success. But she can't harm you anymore. Do I not have to go to special class anymore? No, son. You're very smart and you'll stay in your normal class. You might even have a chance to take advanced math classes. The next day, Mrs. Watson was officially suspended from duty. The school administration immediately announced the situation to all parents via email. Many parents were shocked and wanted to call the school to learn details. Connor's new temporary teacher, Ms. Parker, was much younger, understanding and fair. Ms. Parker immediately noticed Connor's math ability and started supporting him. After Ms. Parker reviewed Connor's test papers, she talked to me. Mr. Wells, Connor is really very talented in mathematics. He's far above class level. I can give him special math projects. This is great news. Connor has always been eager to advance in mathematics. Also, I'll make special efforts for Connor to regain his self-confidence. What he experienced might have affected him. 2 weeks later, Connor's first math test from Ms. Parker came. Connor had scored 100 points. This was his real level and he was now being evaluated fairly. Connor was very happy and his self-confidence had returned. Dad, Ms. Parker is very fair. She correctly evaluates my correct answers. I love math classes again now. Mr. Johnson gave me information about Mrs. Watson's subsequent situation. The school district had completely fired Mrs. Watson. Also, she had been reported to the Illinois Department of Education, and the process to cancel her teaching license had been started. The other children Mrs. Watson had targeted were also identified. There were 4 more children besides Connor. The families of these children were informed and the children's grades were corrected. Also, it was decided to provide psychological support to the children. One of these children was 6-year-old Marcus Miller. Marcus's father, Tony Miller, wanted to talk to me. Tony was very angry but also relieved. Adrian, Marcus was also very good at mathematics, but Mrs. Watson did the same thing to him. My child was blaming himself. He thought he wasn't smart. This is very sad, Tony. The psychological state of these children is very important. I hired a lawyer. I'm thinking of suing Mrs. Watson and the school district. I'm thinking the same thing. These children were victimized. Connor's situation also caught the attention of local media. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune wanted to interview me. I wanted to warn other families by sharing Connor's story. I explained in the interview. If your child's school performance suddenly drops and doesn't match their performance at home, definitely be suspicious. Communicate openly with teachers and apply to higher authorities if necessary. Listen to your child's words. After this interview was published, similar stories started coming from many families. Apparently, Mrs. Watson's behavior wasn't an isolated incident. After this incident, Stonehill Elementary School and the entire school district took new security measures. Security cameras were installed in all classrooms. Teachers' test evaluations are now double-checked and random inspections are conducted. Connor's trust in school and love for mathematics completely returned. With Ms. Parker's support, he became one of the most successful students in math classes. Ms. Parker even started preparing him for next year's Math Olympics. Connor now loves going to school again. Every evening he tells me about the special math projects Ms. Parker gives him. His self-confidence has completely returned. Dad, Ms. Parker gives me very difficult problems, but I can solve them. Mathematics is really very fun. This experience taught me a lot as a father. Always listen to your child's words. They usually tell the truth. If something is going wrong, definitely investigate and stand by your child. In December, Mrs. Watson's case was taken to court. She was tried for official document forgery and abuse of office. Together with Tony Miller and other families, we started the legal process. During the court process, security camera recordings were presented as evidence. Mrs. Watson's defense was very weak. Eventually, she received 6 months in prison and 2 years probation. She also had to pay financial compensation to all affected families. Connor is now 9 years old and a school-wide recognized student in mathematics. When he moves to 4th grade, he will take advanced math classes. Ms. Parker has fully discovered and supports his special talent. This story showed me that achieving justice is possible. If you don't remain silent against injustice and fight, the truth definitely comes out. Connor's righteousness was proven, and Mrs. Watson received the punishment for what she did. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Franklin's support during this process was very important. If they hadn't courageously investigated this situation, Mrs. Watson's crime would never have been revealed. Everything was clearly proven thanks to security cameras. Today, Connor is a happy, successful, and confident student. He completely overcame the psychological trauma Mrs. Watson caused. His love for mathematics increased even more, and he aims to become an engineer in the future. This incident taught me this. Stand by your child to the end and never give up against injustice. Truth always comes out and injustice definitely finds its punishment. Connor's story is the best proof of this.